As a parenting coach coordinator. That's a cool terminology.
So I have been with Dr. Roach since we reopened for a year, and then before that I started in the Second Chance Homes, the original one, 9 years ago. And then as that program progressed, it was a federally funded grant that we had for 4 years. So when that ended, by that time we had merged into the Center for Children and Families, and so I transitioned over there and started just doing, I did some other grants like the HUD, the Housing Urban Development, and then social workers started asking if we were able to do any type of like supervised time with parents, and so we started doing a little bit of that. And then when we got the second 2-year grant for the homes, I went back into the home and did some house management there. And then when that 2-year grant ended, I went back to the center and then just picked up with some more of the supervised parenting time, and then that really took off. And then I have a family and kiddos, and so I needed to take some time off, and so in March of 2016 I quit there, and then just did some private family cases until Dr. Roach came over here, and then she asked me to come back over here with her. So 9 years total I've been in this field.
So you've been doing this for a while then.
Yes.
And so you've seen a lot. Yes. Both the good, bad, and ugly, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, and the life experience I lived in too.
Okay.
So.
Why do you do this type of work?
So my life experience, so I was in foster care when I was younger and kind of was born into the system, and I stayed until I was adopted until I was 8. So they didn't terminate my birth mom's rights until I was probably like 4. Mm-hmm. And then they split my younger brother and I up by the time I was 6. Mm-hmm. And then when I was 8, they were actually going to send me out to the Boys and Girls Ranch until I turned 18. But my mom, who adopted me, she actually was a social worker at the time. And I had always known her because when I would go for visits with my birth mom, I'd actually not really want to participate in those and would go upstairs and hang out with my mom, who adopted me. And so, in total, by the time I was adopted at 8, I had been in over 12 foster homes and had 3 failed adoptions. And so for me, I really recognize the struggle for our kiddos on what that does and the trauma that adds to their lives every time, you know, they're taken away and they're removed and they're put back. And so that's why I believe in what we do here, is giving the parents every opportunity that they have to show that they can parent, and if for some reason they just aren't able to do it in a safe way, that those children can have permanency, because in the long run those children, I mean, they're our future, and they're the same kiddos who play with all of our kiddos, and they deserve to have people who support them and believe in them, so they're able to do something with themselves.
So you have, your perspective is actually very direct, isn't it?
What do you mean?
Well, your perspective of what's going on with parents and their children is very direct, because you yourself were at one time was in the same situation. Mm-hmm. Was that would you say that would be correct?
Well, I definitely am able to function, I think, with more empathy and understanding,
Okay.
perhaps, than other people who have never necessarily lived it from the child's point of view.
Out of curiosity, when you were separated from your family, did you ever suffer as a child separation anxiety because you weren't there with your family?
As an adult, I don't necessarily remember. I mean, with my younger brother, I do. I remember that being like a grief, like a loss.
Right.
As far as my birth mom, I don't necessarily remember that. But as an adult, it's something that I still can struggle with.
Okay, so would it be safe to say that when families come in here and you see that the little children are being separated from their parents, and it has a cause and effect on a child, years later as an adult, obviously you know that for yourself, do you think that sometimes CPS has a tendency to forget the humanness of children being separated from their families? Once again, you being actually having experienced it yourself in several different forms.
That's a hard one. I think that because, there's policies and procedures that they have to follow, and safety, I think that they're left in a very, very tough situation where I don't think that sometimes they're able to have that ability to have that in the forefront of their mind, if that makes sense.
Okay. You're talking about the caseworkers.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Just because obviously safety is always, and we totally function under safety is always, always the most important. But then we also function under best, mental health for kiddos, which is why we try to do more time here than other people are able to do, just because that's something that we have worked into this program. So, if you've got a kiddo who's especially little, so I've got a mom out there who has an infant, and so instead of, the regular 1 time a week for 2 hours, she's here 4 times a week for 4.5 hours. And that's something that Dr. Roach has really stressed, because the bonding, if the end result is reunification, as obviously that's what we're told the goal always is until, otherwise noted, then they need to have that bond. And so for the caseworkers who aren't able to keep kiddos in the home, that's where we try to kind of come into play to make sure that those kiddos still have some security with their parents and that they're seeing them more than once a week and that it's more than an hour. So.
Okay. Do you ever have cases where parents are trying to see their children and they either call in or they, with the new day and age, a lot of people text. They'll text you or other people here trying to see visits. Do you guys always answer all those right away? Do you answer them? Do you ever leave any that are unanswered?
I try not to, but in all reality, sometimes they do go for a few days unanswered just because we do have so many.
What's your caseload here?
I honestly don't know how many cases I have right now.
Okay. What's the bulk caseload here?
I'd have to literally count.
Would you
files.
say
I don't generally count.
In their hundreds?
Oh no, but we have
50s?
Probably 40 to 50, and every family usually gets anywhere between the 2 to 6 hours. And then I also have in-homes that I go to, which involves, a drive, and then I go to the in-homes, and depending on what's going on. So I've got a mom whose kiddos are home and they're little, so like the other night, I had scheduled an hour, but ended up being there for almost 2.5, helping her redirect kiddo back to bed.
Okay.
So it's one of those things, it's hard because it's not necessarily like a 9 to 5 kind of a job where this is, my set schedule. Unfortunately, life happens, and a lot of that life is with my clients, and so what happens with them kind of can dictate how fast I can return calls or text messages or.
Okay. So, if by chance there was 1 or 2 parents out there that couldn't ever get you to respond, or any of these caseworkers, what do you call it? Your parenting coach, coordinator, we'll use a proper term.
Yes.
That doesn't respond, they can call in at any time, and you will eventually respond to them, correct?
Oh yes, and they are more than welcome to call our front desk if they can't get a hold of me on my cell phone or by text.
Okay.
They're more than welcome to come in, because I've got some clients that have just done that. They're like, hey, Bonnie. So,
Okay. Do you ever have people, when you have a parent, for example, that you may not like, okay, people's personalities are all different. Do you try to not show that your personal opinion about them? Do you try to project only that, what your job is to be just the monitor, coordinator, to try to get the child with the parent, or the children with the parent for a time so they can...
And I think that's hard because I think that I have had and do currently have some families and clients who believe that holding them accountable means that I don't like them. I actually do like all of my families and all my parents. I really do like them all. I can see the good in all of them. I can also see their struggle. But I also find that there's certain ones that when you hold them accountable, they don't like it. And there's not a whole lot of responsibility that some of them want to take. Mm-hmm. And so then they view that as I don't like them. And that's absolutely not the case.
Okay. So, without naming any names, of course, so if there were family, adult parents mm-hmm. who may feel that, you wouldn't have any problem if they stopped by and sat down with you and talked to you. Is that correct? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. No.
Okay. So you would take the time to talk to them.
And I would expect that, because that's basically what we try to do here, is like part of the advocating, to tell people that you don't just, ignore issues, or you don't just try to blow up issues, that you try to use your adult skills and have a conversation with people and say, this is how I feel, this is what's going on. Whether that is what's going on or what is not going on, it gives me a better understanding of where they're coming from. So then it gives me the opportunity to be able to look at, okay, maybe there's a different way to approach this family.
So what I hear you saying then is, to any parents out there who may be on your guys' roster,
right?
That if we haven't returned your call or we haven't returned a text message, it doesn't mean that we dislike you. We may be busy. We may be just preoccupied with, because you're probably a little bit overloaded with all the cases that do come in. So what you're telling them is that, look, just come by and visit me, and let's sit down and talk. And let's mm-hmm. Is that what you're saying to their viewers?
Yes.
Okay. And to the parents who may feel that they're being thrown to the side, you don't want them to feel that way.
No.
You're saying you guys have an open door. They can come in and come talk to you.
Always.
Okay.
We have clients that, I have clients that we've worked with years ago that just will show up for support. So, our door is always open.
Okay.
When cases are closed, they are still always welcome here if they ever need anything.
Even if they feel you don't like them?
Yeah.
Okay.
They are always, and that's what's hard about it, like I said, is I don't dislike any of my clients. I can see the good in all of them. And unfortunately, there are some that when you have to redirect time and time again, the same behaviors over and over and over again, and they're not necessarily progressing as fast as they think they should, or they're not progressing at all. There's only so much of that I can do anything with, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. So, Bonnie, who do you folks report to? Is it Dr. Roche or is it CPS?
Dr. Roach is our direct, because this is her business, and I go through all of my cases with her.
Okay.
Who
does she report to?
I don't necessarily know that she does.
Okay, but
she reports to the judges.
Okay, but if a CPS case is handed to her, she is commonly considered in this town, from many sources that we can gather anyway, as a hired gun for CPS. Would you say that's a fair assessment of Dr. Roach?
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Why do you explain that?
Just in fact, the recent court appearances that we've had, Dr. Roach is very, what she sees is what she reports. And so I think that you could probably call judges or attorneys and even some social workers that would say she's very 50-50. Just because one person believes something about a family, that doesn't mean that that's going to be what she reports or what she believes. Or she really tries to, when she does her evaluations, to meet with the families first, to meet with the parents first, gather her information that way, and then she reads all of CPS's reporting and their concerns and their...
Speaking of CPS's report, we know for a fact that, we'll just name a caseworker, Lorna Foreman, who just recently resigned. We publicized that she had made some allegations towards a family. We were able to follow those allegations and actually get the police reports, and Lorna Foreman lied to the court. Now, there are many cases that are like that, where a CPS caseworker will greatly embellish the truth from fiction. You folks didn't get that report. You don't have anything to go on but other than what's in that report, other than what you hear from the parents. So how do you handle knowing that CPS has a history of being very deceptive to the public, to the judges, to the judicial system itself? They're deceptive. That's well known and well established. How do you folks handle it when you have a case file come into you? Do you guys take it verbatim what they're saying?
No. And it's interesting that you bring that up, because I just had a client bring in her affidavit to me, and she had kind of highlighted some stuff. And so kind of what Dr. Roach does, meet with the family, get to know them. I spend a lot of time with the family, obviously, sitting in the room with them and engaging with them. And I try to gauge it as it's somewhere in the middle. So I take the parents' perspective and I take the social worker's perspective, and with safety always at the top of my radar, I find that it's generally somewhere in the middle. And I believe Dr. Roach works on finding her own opinion and forming her own opinion before because we also have like private cases, so cases that are not CPS, and so mom and dad's divorcing or separating or whatever, and we do it the exact same way with that too, is I get both families, side of what's going on, and generally it's somewhere in the middle. And so
Okay, that's a good answer. So let me ask you this, Bonnie. Are there cases that you're aware of, that you know that the caseworker is being dirty and corrupt, without naming the caseworker?
That's a hard question. I believe that there's cases out there that could definitely be handled differently.
Is that a diplomatic way of saying yes?
It's hard because I'm not the caseworkers, and I'm not.
But you see the reports.
And I'm not the parents.
But you see the reports.
Right. And so it's hard to know, obviously, what is going through people's minds and what is the reasoning behind their behaviors. And so that's why we just try to have this be the safe space for parents and their kiddos, because I can't control that, even when I have thoughts that maybe things could be done differently, or maybe they should be done differently, because I'm not a social worker. And so that's not a responsibility that I have to have on my shoulders to make that call.
How long has Dr. Roach been a doctor?
I honestly don't know. Years and
Years?
years
It's been
and years.
over 20 years, maybe?
I believe, yes. Okay. A very long time.
Okay. Does Dr. Roach, have you ever seen a city business license for Dr. Roach?
We actually do have one, yes.
You do have one. Okay.
Yes, we do.
Is it listed under a different name?
I don't know.
In other words, is it listed under the family works for kids, or is it under LLC or whatever, or is it under Bonnie or Brenda Roach's direct name, or is it listed under another title?
I'm honestly not sure. I know we just went and got it renewed, or got it for 2018. It's like $55 downtown.
And when did you guys do that?
For the 2018 one, we just did that last week.
Okay. Because as of last week, Bonnie, I was down there at the city, and the city actually, at the time that I was there, which was the last week of
The last week.
of December, they actually said that she was not licensed and had not been licensed. They couldn't find her in their database even.
Oh.
So that's why I was asking that. And as you probably are aware of, and Dr. Roach I'm sure is aware of, that the only doctors that are exempt from having a city business license are medical doctors. She's not a medical doctor. She's a brain shrink, for better words. But you guys do have a city business license now.
We do, yes. We're
Okay.
set to go for 2018.
Okay, so you've just now.
And I know that we have a state one
Okay.
as well.
Okay.
And we've always had a state one, so I'm not.
Okay.
And unfortunately, part of that is not necessarily my
Yeah.
expertise either. So.
So let's let's go at this in a different line of question here. What if you have a family that comes in, and you know one of the family members is accused of doing meth or drugs? Might not be meth, could be drugs. Yet there's no record of them with law enforcement as having that or
Right.
ever being involved with that. Yet CPS is making that one of the big allegations. Do you folks ever take it upon yourself to go to the police department and see if that person actually has a record with drugs, or that they don't have a record, and then CPS is obviously that portion of the report is obviously false? Have you?
I have never gone down to the police station to ask for any of that. I will ask clients to, have them do some of that legwork. That's part of the advocating for themselves. Okay. And then if they feel strongly about it, we always direct back to attorneys and to social workers. Okay. Just because, obviously, if they're being accused of something that isn't right, then obviously that shouldn't be happening. Okay. And we tend to lean on the side of, if there is something going on with allegations of drug abuse or, that they're dealing or whatnot, that's not our side of it. Our side of it is kiddos and making sure kiddos are safe and that they're getting time with their, sorry, we keep the keys in here. And making sure that the kiddos are having that time with their parents here. Right. And that they're not dealing with that. And then if there is a police report and something's going on and the parents have to deal with that, then the parents have to deal with that.
So.
But we try not to base our judgment of people on, if that makes sense.
Okay. So, your main goal is to get reunification with the family.
And to make sure that the parents have the skills that they need to feel that they're supported and that they have, because parenting's hard. I have kiddos of my own, and every day it's a new adventure. So even when you think,
and they get worse as they become teenagers.
Yeah, I thought toddler was, they get a little bit more sassy, and they are their own people, and that's definitely what we try to help everybody understand, because we do have some families who struggle to understand that children are little tiny humans, and that they're not possessions, and they're not used. They should not be used in a tug-of-war type situation. And so we really try to help families, parents especially, to identify what this is like for the kiddos. Right. And how this affects their behaviors and why they might be having these behaviors and how they can deal with those behaviors. Right.
So, Bonnie, let me ask you, what prompted you to reach out to the media? Because a lot of these entities don't like the media because they are afraid of what we're going to print or publish. What made you say, hey, come talk to us, we're an open book?
Exactly that, is that one of the mamas let me know that she was concerned, that she had heard that there might be some negative reports going on about us, and that she doesn't feel that way at all, and wanted me to just be aware, and she encouraged me to call you. She said you sounded like a very reasonable person, and that would be a good idea. And like I said, I believe that we're doing what's right and what's best for families and trying our hardest, so that's definitely why I was glad that you were willing to come sit down with me, because we don't have anything to hide, and we really want kiddos to be able to be safe and to be secure. And
okay, so you do realize that CPS, once they find out that Dr. Roach or you, or both of you, have talked to the Montana News, is going to be probably a little bit perturbed. Does that faze you guys at all?
Well, I guess would hope that our work and our reputation would, I mean, kind of stifle some of that, because I don't feel, I mean, I haven't said anything, that we don't already talk about. I'm a pretty open book, and how I feel generally comes right on out of my mouth. And so when I don't agree with something, or when I do agree with something, at the end of the day, my job is safety of kids and making sure that they have time with parents and that the parents are getting what they need to succeed. And so I guess I would hope that they wouldn't be upset, but I would also hope that, everybody has their different opinions. And
Your funding, primarily, does it come from CPS cases?
for the parenting, yes.
Okay. What would you say that would be, without giving dollar figures, we don't need to have that, but let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, 5 being the, about even between private and CPS cases, or is it more like 8?
It's probably more like 8.
Okay.
We do, we've got a couple judges that refer to us,
Okay.
because we do try to get clients in immediately for private cases.
Okay.
So we do have that ability. We'll take either one, though. We don't take one over the other.
Okay.
We do either one. So.
Okay. So what I hear you saying is that, and what you're saying to our viewers, is that Dr. Roach's office is not a hired gun for CPS. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are not.
What I hear you saying is that you folks try to reunite families, try to give the parents the coping skills, the tools,
Yes, the tools.
for both the children and the parents, to have a reunification permanently
Right.
and get that. And so that would entail you folks in going into the courtroom and battling or giving your opinion to the judge, or your whatever, your report, whether as far as you guys are concerned, is it a safe bet to say that your report sometimes may not be what CPS wants? CPS may say one thing, but based on what you folks have discovered, interacting with the children and the parents, you folks may have a completely different report or opinion, I guess is maybe what I should say, that you give to the court, irregardless of what CPS is trying to do. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, we report on what we see and what we have seen. So I can't, obviously, like when we talked about the affidavit, that's, good information to have. However, I can only report on what I've seen. I can't report on what I've heard or what other people have heard. I can only report on what I've seen during our parenting times and the interactions, and that's all that I'll ever testify to. And then obviously Dr. Roach's role is different, and she has some other stuff, but I tell people all the time, we don't work for, our referrals come from CPS, and obviously there are children out there who need to have CPS in their lives. But we don't function just for CPS, and we also don't function just for the parents. Our primary concern is children. And so we always report on what we see for the children, both good and bad.
Okay. Do you know a caseworker by the name of Myra Anthony? What do you think about her? Is she a good caseworker? Bad caseworker?
I think that she is doing the best that she can with the workload that they have.
That's a very general answer. Can you be more specific?
It's hard because, like I said, I don't have their caseloads, and at the end of the day, I was raised by a mom who was a social worker, and you could not pay me $1 million to have that job.
Well, let's ask this then. Could it be maybe when caseworkers sometimes get a little senilic in their ways and their thoughts, and they become burned out, and then they become bad caseworkers? Is that a possibility?
I think all professions have the possibility of just being done.
Okay, so let's take CPS though, the Department of CPS. Have you seen, without naming the caseworkers, have you seen caseworkers that even you know that they should look for a different occupation? Without naming the caseworkers.
It's a hard, that really is a hard one. Just because human services and social services, it's not an easy path to choose for any sort of career. And so I think that I feel like it's a team kind of thing, you know, like if I'm struggling, that it's my team's job to help me see that I'm struggling. And then
Now you're talking about if you're a caseworker.
well, and just even in this job, because
Okay.
I think that you have I mean, it's the same situation. Like, you know, if I'm struggling in my life or if I'm burnt out, I mean, I could very easily become, you know, I guess difficult maybe. And so I feel, I don't know, it's hard because I don't think it's any one person type thing. So, I mean, if I was struggling here, you know, it would be my team's responsibility to kind of help me wrangle it back in and rope it back in. And
Okay. So, is it fair to say that in your 9-year, almost 10-year, you have seen good caseworkers and you have seen bad caseworkers? Is that a fair statement?
I have seen good caseworkers, and I have seen caseworkers who are burnt out. I'm not quick to say bad caseworkers, just because I don't think that anybody intends, like, I don't believe that anybody wakes up in the morning to, you know, purposely be difficult. I think that there's things that go on in people's lives that direct them, that they end up struggling more than other ones.
Has there been any contention between the CPS office and your office in regards to particular cases?
I don't think so. I think that I mean, I really believe that, you know, our workers, like our social workers, understand that we have a job to do, and that's our job, and we take it very seriously. And so if there ever have been hard feelings, I would hope, you know, they pass, because we're adults and we all have a job to do.
Okay. Do you know a caseworker by the name of Mandy Reinhardt?
I don't really know her, actually.
But you've heard of her.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard good, have you heard good and bad?
Mm-hmm.
Both. Okay. So obviously there are two sides of the story of everything, as you know.
Right.
But when you're dealing with caseworkers, there's really no set, well, that caseworker is kind of in the middle. Either you're good or you're bad, correct? Either a child is a good child or a bad child. There's no in between.
Well, and that's what's hard about it, because working with Dr. Roach for 9 years, you pick up some of the, you know, the underrooted reasons for behaviors. And so we absolutely don't function with there's good children and there's bad children, there's good adults or there's bad adults. We function under there's good and safe choices and there's poor choices and unsafe choices.
So when a caseworker makes a poor choice, what do you classify that as? Since they're a caseworker, CPS caseworker, I'm referring to.
Right.
Any of them. Is it just that they've made a bad choice on a case that affects the children, affects the parents, and if they're ordered to come here or they come here, it also affects you folks.
Right.
Because of a bad caseworker's bad choice. Have you ever seen that?
Well, like I said before, there are things that I do agree with, and there's things that I don't agree with, and that's where we try to help parents advocate for themselves, and that's why we try to make sure that we report back exactly what we see, because if there are cases where, you know, maybe something different could have happened with a family or a different route could have been taken, that it's our goal for reunification and to get those kiddos home as quick as possible. And so hopefully having them be here, we're able to do that. And then, you know, if there is something going on with a caseworker or caseworkers, that the people above can take everybody's information into consideration and get those kiddos back to where they need to be.
So, in short form, you have seen where caseworkers have made bad choices.
I have seen cases, in my personal opinion, that I don't necessarily agree with, but because I'm not a social worker, that's what I mean by you couldn't pay me $1 million to be a social worker, because I think that there's always the good and the bad and the ugly in all professions. Just like in my profession, I mean, I've got some, obviously parents who are unhappy with me for whatever reason that might be.
But you're also telling me that those same parents who may be upset with you for whatever reason that they have, you've also indicated to the Montana News that those parents can actually come and sit down with you and talk with you.
Oh, yeah.
So just because you're not maybe responding by text message or by phone and calling them back or whatever, doesn't mean that you're ignoring them. They're more than welcome at any time to come in here and sit down with you and talk with you to try to get something
Figured out.
Resolved and figured out.
Definitely.
Is that what you're telling our viewers?
Yes,
Okay.
always.
So, if that's the case, then there should be no reason for any parent to be, for whatever reason, to be upset with Dr. Roach's approach or team of people, or parenting coordinators, because they at any time can come to you folks and sit down and say, hey, look, you haven't been responding to my text messages, you haven't been calling me back, I want to know when I can see my child. Can you set that up for us?
Right.
And you folks will sit down and do whatever you can work out. Am I correct?
Oh, definitely. Today's my day off, and I actually have a family in right now that we were able to get something figured out. So,
Okay. So you try to go beyond your Call of Duty. Like, today's your day off. You should be home with your own family, but instead you're here helping another family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We do holidays. I did some transports on Christmas, so some kiddos could be with their parents on Christmas. And then
I notice you use the term kiddos.
well, I have kids, kiddos,
Okay.
children.
Okay.
Because they're tiny humans. Sometimes I just call them tiny humans because that is what they are as well.
Sometimes do you find that children, some of the things they say are pretty perceptive?
Oh, very. Extremely. Yeah. If you ever need an answer to something, ask a child, because they are extremely intelligent and they pick up way more than I think people give them credit for sometimes.
Okay. So to kind of quickly come to a close here, Bonnie, you have been working in this field for
Almost 10 years.
almost 10 years. You're not doing it because it's just a 9-to-5 job, obviously, or you wouldn't be here today. You have a heart to reunite families, and so does Dr. Roche. You've indicated to me that Dr. Roche is not a CPS hired gun, but she does get cases from CPS, correct?
Yes.
You've also indicated to me that Dr. Roche doesn't always agree with what, or you, either or any of the parenting coordinators may not always agree with a CPS report. Did you guys try to find out the truth, taking the information from the parents first, then looking at the report, and your observations, and then putting things, and the children, and then putting things together from there? Is that correct?
So when I get a referral, I tend to try to call, placement first, check for their kind of schedule, to be respectful of that situation. And then, I get a hold of parents and kind of see what they think the reasoning for removal is. And then obviously have conversations with social workers about what the main concern is. And generally, we do get affidavits, but we have goals of parenting of what we're working on. And so even depending on, what, the reason for removal was, we tend to just try to get what is the goal, what is the main concern, what safety issue are we working on. And so then we're able to just come at it as, helping parents parent, be safe, and make sure kids are secure. And so it's not really my job to try to figure out, what, quote, is the truth or what isn't the truth. mine is to find what is the best avenue to get this family where they need to be so kiddos can have permanency.
Is it true that CPS gets funding if they, if a parent doesn't file, doesn't contest?
I honestly have no idea about how or where money comes from or doesn't come from.
Okay. Okay. Well, Bonnie, I appreciate you talking to the Montana News. I've given you some really pointed questions, and you've done quite well with answering them. And some of them were kind of put you on the spot, but you handled them very well, and I appreciate your candor with me and being very open. We will publish this after we edit it and make it ready for public viewing. We won't certainly cut out anything that you
Will be like
here.
random at the beginning
No.
and put it at the end.
We won't do that because we want the public to be able to feel like they're sitting right here with you, just like I am sitting right here with you, and being able to have that conversation, even though the questions may be pointed, even though some of them maybe have been a little difficult, and you had to be careful how you answered them, okay? So as that parent can come in and sit here, just as I am, and talk to you and say, hey, I'm not seeing my kid. Why? You give them your reason, but then if they come at you and say, look, can you please make it to where I can see my kid? I haven't seen my kid. You then will do your best to make that happen, to get some time with that, the children with that parent.
Yes, and sometimes, unfortunately, what happens too is we have the scheduling conflicts where things fall on the holidays.
Right.
And so if you have
Like
a
today.
parenting, yes, so if you have a parenting time on Monday, generally, the past 2 weeks have been a holiday, and
Right.
so definitely we will try to accommodate something and make sure that we can get something figured out because that's a long time for kiddos not to see their parents. So
Good enough. Well, Bonnie, once again, thank you for talking with the Montana News. And we purposely left out names other than caseworkers. They don't matter. But the children matter, the parents matter.
well, and our caseworkers matter too. Like I said, that's not.
But you guys don't have CPS caseworkers. They're not CPS caseworkers. That's a different type of a caseworker, correct?
Oh yeah, no, we're not.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's, I mean, human services, social services, it's hard.
Okay. But you're not like, your caseworkers are not like, they don't go into a family's home and take the children out, and they don't cause that rift.
No, we go into families' homes and we help with, parenting, bedtime, groceries, budgeting, schedules.
Okay, so basically, once again, you're giving that family the tools.
We try.
Okay.
Whether they're receptive or not, that's completely all them. So
Well, thank you for talking with me.
thank you for the opportunity. We
Yes,
appreciate
and
it.
we certainly will let our viewers see this, and we hope that it dispels some of the negativity out there that regarding Dr. Roche. And we would like to come back and talk with Dr. Roche.
And she asked me to get you in her schedule, so.
Great.